Hello, hello, the name is Regis Kilbin, and the game is Hearthstone. And today I'm going to talk about the 10 best 1-mana cards in Hearthstone. Now, as a newer player, or someone who's still growing into their collection, it can sometimes be difficult to identify the best cards in each mana slot and the cards that you should look to include in, a majority of your decks. So it can help to identify some of the best cards. It's also just fun to look and see which 1-mana cards have really stood out over time, and even in the newest expansions or adventures are really finding a home pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and identify my 10 best 1-mana cards. Now, of course, yours might be a little different. If you think I'm crazy, let me know. If I left something off the list, I'd love to hear it. But for me, these are the 10 best cards that I could identify in Hearthstone right now at the 1-mana spot. Starting with number 10 is actually the Druid card, Living Roots. This is a new one from the Grand Tournament that has carved out a spot in a ton of different Druid decks. It really just allows Druids to get off to a quicker start than they could in the past, thanks to the ability to summon 2 1/1 saplings. It's nice when Druids are able to get token minions onto the board, because if opponents can't remove them, then they set up really well for Savage Roar combos. But also the ability to just do 2 damage as a spell with Living Roots makes it even better. You can even use that in conjunction with your standard 9-mana combo to make it a 16 damage combo for 10 mana, as opposed to just the standard 14 damage. It can also be good to ping off scary minions like a Knife Juggler if you don't have any other options, and you just have to do that 2 damage. So Living Roots is still pretty new, but since it's already showed up in so many varieties of Druid and really made a home for itself in a well-refined mid-range combo Druid deck, I think it deserves the number 10 spot on this list. At the number 9 spot, we are going to go with a Priest card, and that is Powerword Shield. This thing is really just packed with so much value for its mana cost that it shows up in Priest deck time and time again, almost no matter the variety of Priest deck it is. For 1 mana, getting 2 health on a minion would almost be worth it by itself, right? There are spare parts cards that cost a mana and give you only 1 health for a minion. But this one gives you 2, and that's nice. It allows you to trade efficiently or just make your taunts sturdier, or keep a nice something like a Northshire Cleric alive in the early game, because 5 health on a Northshire Cleric is much harder to kill than 3 health. So it works in that way, but you also get to draw a card. In most cases, drawing a card is worth 1 to 1.5 mana on its own, so that's amazing. For 1 mana, you get to draw a card, and the health bonus just makes this card insane. It's really one of the strongest 1-mana cards in terms of value in the game. Now, Priest isn't the most popular class in the world, and neutral cards are going to take precedence in this list just because neutral cards can show up in a much wider variety of decks than a single Priest card. So Powerword Shield doesn't quite make it to the top of the list, but it certainly earns its spot at the number 9 slot. Now for the number 8 card on the list, we are going to go to Warlock and take a look at Power Overwhelming. Not only does this have some of my favorite artwork in the game, I just think that's so packed full of personality, but getting 4/4 on a minion for 1 mana is totally nuts. It allows all kinds of Warlock decks to do all kinds of different things. In aggressive board-based decks like Zoo, this is great for trading into a really nasty taunt minion like a Sledge Belcher and getting it out of the way for your other minions to pass through. It's also great just for doing lethal damage. You get an extra 4 damage with charge with any minion on the board, so it's often enough to push over your opponents and send them to their doom. It's been used in combo type Warlock decks with charging minions for huge burst damage. It's just kind of a jack of all trades damage card that allows you to do so many different things so well. Plus it has a really cute little thing at the end of the text here. Then it dies horribly. That's fun. Some extra flavor in game is just nice to see. Power Overwhelming shows up in so many Warlock decks, and Warlock is such a popular class throughout the history of Hearthstone that it certainly has earned its spot at the number 8. And up next at number 7, we're going to take a look at a new card from the League of Explorers expansion, if we can find him. That is Surfin Lemur. He's still very, very new, so it's hard to say how this card will stand the test of time, but so far he is showing up in a ton of different decks and seems to be extremely good on average. Not only does he have a 1/3 body, which is the best we've seen so far on a 1-mana minion, really, that doesn't have some sort of downside. He also has a really interesting battle cry that allows you to discover a new basic hero power. That is so good for some classes and some deck archetypes to allow them to fit their hero power more closely to what they're aligned to do. So for instance, a priest who's really aggressive doesn't need a defensive hero power like a heal anymore. They can get another class's hero power that helps them fit into an aggressive mold. So he really opens up a ton of different ways to play certain classes. He's got a great body. He has Murloc synergies, which makes him great in Murloc decks. Surfin Lemur so far is an extremely good card and definitely one of the best new 1-drops we've seen in a very long time. He's our number 7 card on the best 1-drops in the game. Moving on to number 6, we're going to head to the Warrior class and the card Execute. This has really been a staple for Warriors forever. It's a classic set card. It's free as well, which is always nice. And it's in every variation of Control Warrior. I've never seen a Control Warrior list without Execute. Since it allows you to kill almost anything for only 1 mana, it is one of the best tempo plays and hard removal cards in the game. It's even in aggressive warriors like Patron Warrior featured Execute just to get taunts out of the way or reduce scary threats. It shows up all the time. It's a staple for the class that has been around forever. Control Warriors have been at the forefront of the metagame for years at this point. So it's hard to deny the importance of a card like Execute when you consider its place in the metagame. It stops anything, and it has made Warriors what they are for so very long. And that is why it takes the number 6 slot on our list. At number 5, we're going to head back to Priest. That's not it. And we're going to take a look at Northshire Cleric. Another strong 1-mana Priest card. And if you get Powerword Shield and Northshire Cleric in combo, you usually have a pretty good opener. This one is a 1/3 minion, which again we mentioned is really the best stat allocation for a 1-drop that doesn't have a downside. And has an insanely powerful effect, much like Powerword Shield. Anytime a minion is healed, draw a card. So between Northshire Cleric and Powerword Shield, Priests really have all of their card draw necessities taken care of. They don't really need too much else when it comes to card draw between those two cards. If you use them well, for only 1 mana, you can draw 3 or 4 or even 10 or 20 cards off of a Northshire Cleric or 2. So you can do some crazy stuff with Northshire Cleric, and remember, it's not just allied minions, it's enemy minions, so Northshire Cleric plus Circle of Healing has often been the draw engine for Priests for a very long time. This card has a good body, it sets up for buffs like Valen's Chosen and Powerword Shield. Its effect is amazing, and it's a great start for pretty much every Priest deck ever. So Northshire Cleric takes the number 5 spot on our list. At number 4, we're moving over to Mages, and the card Mana Worm. Again, you can see a trend here with 1/3 1-drops. But this one is nuts because it can become so much more than a 1/3. I'm sure you ran into a mage who's gotten off to a crazy start, playing a Mana Worm on turn 1, following it up with a handful of spells, and ending up with something like a 5/3 or maybe even a 7/3 Mana Worm that's just punching your face for so much damage and you never found a way to clear it. So it essentially won them the game all on its own. When you have a card that's this good at its default stats, a 1/3 is perfect, and it has so much potential upside to become a scary 5+ damage threat. It is extremely good to add into your deck. It's a feature in Tempo Mage, but it also shows up in a variety of different mage decks. So Mana Worm is one of the scariest 1-drops in the game since they nerfed Undertaker so very long ago. This thing is really the new age Undertaker that's almost just as scary when mages get off to a good start. And now we're moving on to our top 3. So far we've been looking at class-based 1-drops, or 1-mana cards, but really it's the neutral 1-mana cards that are the strongest. They're able to be used in so many different decks, and typically these 3 cards show up time and time again. And that's why they're taking our top 3 spots. These are the podium of the top 1-drops, starting with number 3, and that is Leper Gnome. This guy is in every face deck that there's ever been. He's got great stats as a 2/1 for 1. That's just enough damage to make him annoying. Plus, his death rattle means that he's almost guaranteed to do an extra 2 damage to the enemy hero. If you get this thing out on turn 1, sometimes it will do 6 to 8 damage all by itself for only 1 mana, which is absolutely nuts. Even in the late game when you drop him, you can almost guarantee that he's going to do 2 damage, even if he gets killed without attacking. So 1 mana for 2 damage isn't too bad in a deck that's all about hitting the enemy's face as fast and as hard as possible. Leper Gnome is really a staple in all those face decks and a lot of aggressive decks as well. And that's why he takes the number 3 spot. At number 2, we kind of have the opposite of Leper Gnome, and that is Zombie Chow. This guy is all about slowing down aggressive decks with an early 1-drop. So he'll be in mid-range or control-style decks that want to get a strong minion out onto the board early to deny early game board presence from those aggressive decks. And he has really, really nice stats. 2/3 for 1 mana, of course, is amazing because it kills a lot of different stuff and it has enough health to stay alive against things like a Leper Gnome. It does have a downside. The death rattle restores 5 health to the enemy hero, so you can heal your opponent, which can make this a little bit annoying if you draw it in the late game and are forced to heal someone who's almost dead. But a majority of the time, you're going to want this on turns 1, 2, or 3 to fill out your early game curve and deposit a body onto the board that trades efficiently. And then you don't really care so much about the 5 health heal because they might either be at full health or you're not worried about killing them right away. You just want to survive against aggressive decks and develop some early game board presence at the cost of the enemy's health pool, which you could deal with later. But Zombie Chow is really the perfect early game curve option for decks that need to stop the opponent, making him an absolute staple in control decks. He shows up in every variety of control deck that doesn't have a class-based 1 mana card that can slow down opponents, making him our second best 1 mana card in the game. And finally, this one might surprise some people, but to me, I think it's the most reliable and most regularly used 1 mana card in the game. The best 1 mana card in Hearthstone, to me, is Abusive Sergeant. Not only is Abusive Sergeant used in a lot of aggressive decks just because of his nice stat allocation, he's a 2/1, and the fact that he gives a battle cry of +2 attack, that makes him very good in aggressive decks, both that are wanting to hit the face, so you'll see him in face decks like Hunter that just keep pounding the enemy's head, but you'll also see him in like board control aggressive decks like Zoo, so that he enables trades, like a 1 mana Flame Imp can suddenly trade into a Sludge Belcher, thanks to Abusive Sergeant. You'll even sometimes see this card in control decks. A lot of Warlocks will run Abusive Sergeant, sometimes to set up for like Shadow Flame combos. I've even seen it used to enable big game hunter kills on something like an Emperor Thaurissan. So Abusive Sergeant really has a ton of flexibility for what he is. He's in every aggressive deck that's ever been. He shows up in a handful of other decks as well, making him kind of the jack of all trades of 1 mana minions. And since he's a neutral card, anybody can use him at any time. There's so much value packed into this thing for 1 mana. He can help you kill huge threats. He can be a 2/1 body that's annoying on turn 1. He can set up weird combo plays. Abusive Sergeant can do a little bit of everything, and he's been around for a very long time, but that doesn't make him any less good. He's still a very potent piece of the metagame, and that is why, to me, he's the best 1 mana card in Hearthstone. And that's it for my list. Thanks so much for watching. Again, let me know if you think I'm crazy or if I missed a key card. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I appreciate all the discussion you can offer. And until next time, thanks so much for watching. Game on.